The Zaltari were no strangers to conquest. Their empire had spread across 3 spiral arms of the galaxy, absorbing lesser species with the efficiency of a tidal wave consuming a sandcastle. To them, humanity was just another primitive race, an amusing anomaly, perhaps, but nothing that warranted true concern. So when a research vessel Zelvas abducted a young human child from a colony world, it was done without hesitation or fear. Their scientists had long suspected that human adaptability was an evolutionary quirk worth studying. A controlled specimen, an unformed mind, will provide invaluable data. What they had not accounted for was Emma Carter, age 5. The first problem arose within minutes of her arrival. This creature is defective, Research Overseer Kthal hissed, his 4 eyes twitching in distress. Across the sterile observation chamber, the human child was screaming. Not a normal, rational distress signal, but the kind of high-pitched, lungs-of-iron wail that made even battle-hardened Zaltari recoil. She has done this for an entire rotation, one of the junior scientists muttered, rubbing his temple. We attempted to sedate her, but the standard neuroinhibitors are ineffective. If anything, they seem to have made her louder. Kthal's mandibles clicked in frustration. He turned to his subordinate. Have you deciphered her communication? The junior scientist hesitated. Yes, Overseer. Her cries are a demand. Kthal narrowed his eyes. For what? Ice cream. A tense silence filled the chamber. The Overseer massaged his ridged forehead. This was not how superior species operated. The Zaltari had broken warrior castes, shattered planetary governments, reduced entire species to servitude. They did not negotiate with pre-sapient larvae over dietary preferences. And yet, no amount of logic, coercion, or threat seemed capable of stopping the human child's endless caterwauling. The next problem came when they left her unattended for precisely 7 minutes. By the time the research team returned, Emma had somehow managed to escape her containment suite. The footage showed her stacking various alien implements into an impromptu ladder, clambering into an open vent, and promptly disappearing into the ship's labyrinthine maintenance shafts. A general alarm was raised. After all, the ship was equipped with advanced security measures, biometric locks, automated sentries, reinforced bulkheads. No species had ever breached Zaltari infrastructure before. They found her an hour later in the primary engineering bay, happily chewing on what looked suspiciously like a power conduit. You are fortunate the core was inactive, one of the engineers muttered, prying the sparking device from her grip. Emma, unimpressed, responded with a firm kick to his shin. The engineer howled in pain, hopping backward. Kthal stared in muted horror. No creature should be able to injure a Zaltari that easily, especially not one so small. We may have underestimated her, one of the researchers admitted. Overseer Kthal was about to order a full reassessment of their methodology when a shrill alert echoed across the ship. The lights flickered, and a deep, ominous thrum reverberated through the hull. A voice chimed in over the ship-wide comms. Unscheduled arrival in high orbit, the bridge officer reported, his voice tinged with something dangerously close to fear. Multiple unidentified warships have entered the system. Kthal's blood ran cold. Display visual. The main view screen flickered, revealing a fleet. Not a scouting party, not a diplomatic envoy. An entire battle group. Massive, angular ships loomed in the void, bristling with weapons. They were not sleek, elegant, or aesthetically pleasing. They were human, rugged, blocky, and designed for war. A transmission cut through the static. The voice on the other end was clipped, gruff, and carried the weight of authority. This is Captain James Kovacs of the United Human Systems Fleet. A pause. Then, in a voice that was both lethal and infuriatingly casual, you have our kid. Get her back, or we start punching holes in your sky. For the first time in centuries, the Zaltari experienced something wholly unfamiliar. Panic. Aboard the UHS Retribution. Captain Jim Kovacs leaned back in his command chair, his expression carefully neutral. The bridge of the Retribution was a controlled storm of activity, officers and technicians, moving with precision born from years of discipline. To his left, Dr. Eleanor Park tapped a stylus against her datapad. I still can't believe this is happening. Which part? Kovacs asked dryly. The fact that an advanced alien race kidnapped a 5-year-old? Or the fact that we're about to go to war because of it? Yes. A chuckle came from the helm. Isaac Zeke. O'Reilly leaned back, boots propped up against the console in blatant violation of protocol. I dunno, Cap. You asked me. They brought this on themselves. I mean, who in their right mind kidnaps a human child? Kovac sighed. He had spent his career preparing for a first contact war, anticipating the cold calculus of interstellar diplomacy, the inevitable conflicts over resources, borders, and ideology. He had not anticipated that humanity's first true military engagement would be a rescue operation. A new voice cut through chatter. Sasha Volkova, the ship's chief engineer and resident wildcard, turned from her console with a wicked grin, intercepted a transmission. Sir, they are, how do I put this, absolutely losing their shit. Eleanor shot her a warning look. We're still technically in negotiations. Sasha rolled her eyes. Right, and I'm technically the Queen of Mars. Kovacs exhaled through his nose. Options. Eleanor straightened. Diplomatically, we give them a chance to surrender the child. Militarily, we hit their power grid first, disable their engines, and board them before they can react. Zeke grinned. Or, and hear me out, we let Sasha hack their comms and blast them with 20 minutes of unskippable baby shark until they beg for mercy. Kovacs gave him a flat stare. Zeke shrugged. I'm just saying psychological warfare is underutilized. Kovacs ignored him and turned back to the view screen. The Zaltari were still stalling, likely scrambling for a response. They didn't understand. This wasn't a political dispute. It wasn't a matter of territorial boundaries or ideological conflict. This was a kidnapping. And humans? Humans did not forgive when you threatened their own. Kovacs leaned forward, his voice carrying across the bridge. Open a channel, he ordered. The comms officer complied. Kovacs met the alien overseer's wide, frantic eyes. You've got 5 minutes, he said coolly. Then he smiled. After that, we start getting creative. Overseer Kthal had once believed himself to be a creature of reason. He had dissected countless species, mapped the neural pathways of 100 different sentient races, and published treatises on the predictable behaviors of primitive civilizations. None of that prepared him for the sheer nightmare that was humanity. On the view screen, the fleet of human warships remained ominously still. They did not posture. They did not send complex ultimatums laden with bureaucratic doublespeak. They simply waited. And the message was clear: 5 minutes. Then hell follows. Kthal had underestimated them. That much was certain. His first mistake had been assuming that humans would react with caution, like other species they had studied. He had expected diplomacy, bargaining, an attempt to de-escalate. Instead, they had sent warships. The overseer clenched his mandibles. They still had the advantage. Zaltari technology was centuries ahead of humanity's. Their shields were stronger, their weapons more advanced, their ships faster. And yet, every instinct screamed that none of that would matter. Overseer, a trembling technician called out. The child! She has escaped again. Kthal resisted the urge to scream. Aboard the UHS Retribution, Jim Kovacs watched the countdown on his display tick past the 3-minute mark. The Zaltari were stalling, scrambling to decide whether to comply or gamble on surviving a human assault. He almost felt sorry for them. Almost. Status update? He asked. Sasha grinned from her station, intercepted their internal comms. Our girl Emma is still loose on their ship, and from what I can tell, she's causing absolute havoc. Jim exhaled sharply. Define havoc. Eleanor adjusted her glasses. She disabled one of their containment fields, overloaded a security system, and somehow got into the ventilation network. Which means... Sasha swiveled in her chair, smirking. Which means their automated climate controls are now fully compromised. Reports indicate fluctuating temperatures, random bursts of oxygen deprivation, and an unconfirmed but entirely hilarious flood of artificial gravity failures. Jim pinched the bridge of his nose. She's 5. Yeah, Zeke said cheerfully, but she's our 5. Jim turned to Eleanor. Can we get a location on her? Eleanor nodded, bringing up a tactical overlay. If we can pinpoint her biosignature, we can use a precision transporter beam to yank her out, but we need them distracted long enough to get a lock. Jim considered that. Suggestions? Zeke grinned. Oh, I got one. Aboard the Zaltari research vessel Zelvas. Overseer Kthal felt his antennae twitch as the music began. It came through the ship's internal speakers, at first faint, a barely audible chime, then growing in volume until it saturated every single deck. A high-pitched, looping melody filled the air. Baby shark, do-do-do-do-do-do. Kthal I twitched. What is this? He demanded. The technicians frantically scanned their systems. It's an audio transmission from a human fleet. They have infiltrated our communications grid. The chorus began again. Louder. Baby shark. Do-do-do-do-do-do. The bridge crew screamed. Back on the retribution. Zeke was laughing hysterically. I swear to God, it's working, Sasha confirmed, monitoring the Zaltari's now completely scrambled tactical network. They're too busy trying to shut it down and notice we're running a deep scan of their ship. Eleanor's console beeped. Got her. A small, blinking marker appeared on the display. Emma's biosignature, tucked deep inside the Zaltari's power core chamber. Jim leaned forward. Can we transport her out? Eleanor grimaced. Not yet. There's interference from their shielding grid. If we don't time it exactly right, she might rematerialize inside a wall. Jim didn't hesitate. Then we take out the shields. Sasha, prepare an EMP burst. Zeke, when the field drops, get us in position for immediate retrieval. Zeke saluted lazily. You got it, Cap. Jim turned back to the view screen, where Overseer Kthal now appeared, looking frantic. You have violated our systems, Kthal growled. This is an act of war. Jim smiled. Buddy, you kidnapped a human child. Kthal hesitated. Surely there is no need for hostilities. Jim gave Sasha a nod. A pulse of blue light rippled outward as the Retribution's EMP torpedo struck the Zaltari ship. Their shields flickered and died. Eleanor slammed a button. Initiating transport now. A second later, a small, furious-looking 5-year-old materialized in the center of the bridge. Emma Carter did not look happy. She took one look around, then stomped her foot. Where's my ice cream? Aboard the Zelvas. The bridge crew watched in stunned silence as a child vanished from their ship. For one blissful second, there was peace. Then the human fleet opened fire. The Retribution's plasma cannons ripped through the Zaltari's weapons array, disabling their ability to retaliate. Other human warships flanked them, targeting their engines. Kthal stared at the screen in horror. This wasn't a battle. It was a lesson. Humans did not attack for conquest. They did not fight for territory. They did not even seek to destroy. They fought with the surgical precision of a species that only wanted to send a message. The message was clear. Do not touch what is ours. Aboard the Retribution. Emma sat on the captain's chair, scowling. Someone had wrapped a blanket around her shoulders, and a crew member was hurriedly preparing a bowl of ice cream. Jim crouched beside her. You good, kid? Emma took a long, solemn bite of ice cream. Then she looked him dead in the eye. Can we blow up their ship? Jim sighed. No, kid. We're the good guys. Emma huffed. I still want to blow up their ship. Sasha grinned. Me too, kid. Me too. Jim stood, turning back to the view screen. The Zaltari vessel was crippled but intact. Their entire fleet was now outnumbered, outgunned, and outclassed. The war wasn't over. But for the first time in history, the Zaltari had learned fear, and humanity was just getting started. The silence on the Zaltari bridge was suffocating. Overseer Kthal clutched the edge of his command console, his mind spiraling. The ship's defenses were in shambles, their shields were down, and their engines were barely functional. The humans had overwhelmed them without even trying. And now their stolen specimen, the small, unrelentingly destructive human child, was back in enemy hands. Overseer, one of his officers rasped, breaking the heavy stillness, What do we do? Kthal didn't answer immediately. His mind was running through every possible scenario, every possible out. The Zaltari were not accustomed to this position. They were the conquerors, the researchers, the ones who dictated the terms. But humanity had flipped that reality on its head. He had to regain control. Slowly, deliberately, Kthal straightened. "Send a system-wide distress signal," he ordered. "Call for reinforcements." His subordinates hesitated. "But, Overseer, if we do this, we admit weakness," one of them dared to say. Kthal's mandibles clicked. "We are weak. If we do not call for aid, we will be nothing but a footnote in the history of this conflict." Another pause. Then, begrudgingly, the distress beacon was activated. A pulse of coded data shot out into the void, summoning the full might of the Zaltari Empire. The Overseer could only hope they arrived before humanity decided to end them completely. Aboard the Retribution, Jim Kovacs watched the Zaltari ship on the view screen, his arms crossed. He didn't need to be a genius to know what they had just done. The moment their distress beacon fired off, every Zaltari warship in range had been called to their position. Zeke whistled from the helm. "Well, looks like they just invited all their friends to the party." Sasha cracked her knuckles. "Great. I was starting to get bored." Eleanor sighed. "This isn't ideal." Jim turned to her. "How long do we have?" Eleanor tapped at her console, estimating 15 minutes before the first wave of reinforcements arrives. An hour before their full fleet mobilizes. Jim exhaled through his nose. They had come for a rescue mission. They hadn't planned on starting a full-scale war. But now the Zaltari had escalated. Jim turned to Emma, who was still seated in his chair, methodically dismantling a protein bar and glowering at the screen like a warlord surveying her territory. "You good, kid?" he asked. Emma looked at him. "Are we going to smash them?" Jim hesitated. "Well..." Emma jabbed a sticky finger at the screen. "I think we should smash them." Sasha snorted. "I like this kid." Jim sighed, rubbing his temples. "We can't just smash them, Emma. War has consequences." Emma tilted her head. "They took me." A simple sentence. A simple truth. But in that moment, the weight of it settled over the bridge. Jim met Sasha's gaze, then Eleanor's, then Zeke's. Slowly, deliberately, he turned back to the view screen. "Prep the fleet," he ordered. The war was coming to them now, and humanity did not lose. 15 minutes later, the first wave of Zaltari warships arrived in system with military precision. They came in tight formations, bristling with high-yield plasma cannons and advanced energy shields. By all accounts, they were a force that should have terrified humanity. Instead, they were met with laughter. Sasha had patched into their comms again, monitoring their tactical discussions. The Zaltari commander spoke in clipped, urgent tones, analyzing human battle doctrine, and finding none. "Their fleet structure is irregular," one of them was saying. "Their formations are chaotic." Another voice snapped. "They are unpredictable. No discernible patterns. No adherence to logical positioning." Jim smirked. They were learning. Humans didn't fight with cold, calculated efficiency. They fought like apex predators, with instinct, with misdirection, with sheer dumb audacity. He turned to Eleanor. "Status." She didn't look up from her display. "Their forces outnumber us 3-1. Zeke grinned. "I like those odds." Jim chuckled. Then he stepped forward, opening a fleet-wide transmission. "All ships," he took a breath. "Hit them first. Hit them hard. And don't let up until they beg." The battle began. The Zaltari's worst day ever. The Zaltari expected overwhelming technological superiority to win them the engagement. Instead, they were introduced to human ingenuity. One of their cruisers went down within the first 60 seconds, not because of superior firepower, but because Zeke had maneuvered the Retribution behind an asteroid, using its gravitational field to slingshot an entire chunk of rock directly into their engines. A second ship found itself the victim of Sasha's electronic warfare. Their weapons targeting systems reversed, causing the fire on their own allies before they even realized what was happening. And the third simply ran. The Zaltari, for all their pride, had never fought an enemy like this. Humans adapted. Humans improvised. And worst of all, humans had fun doing it. Meanwhile, aboard the Retribution, Emma Carter was having the best day of her life. She had been given a headset, which meant she could hear the chaos happening in real time. "Zeke, get out of their firing arc." "I know how to fly, Eleanor." "Retribution, this is Fire Team Gamma. Enemy ships are panicking." "I repeat, they are panicking." Sasha hooped. "Oh, this is delicious." Emma giggled. She didn't know much about war, but she knew that the bad guys were losing. Jim, watching the battle unfold, let himself feel a sliver of pride. The Zaltari had made two fatal mistakes. First, they had taken what was his. And second, they had thought humanity played by the rules. The battlefield was a graveyard of Zaltari arrogance. What had begun as a calculated response to humanity's incursion had devolved into a desperate retreat. The Zaltari's once proud warships now drifted as wreckage, their elegant formations shattered, their technological superiority rendered meaningless in the face of pure human insanity. On the bridge of the Retribution, Jim Kovacs watched as the last surviving Zaltari vessels disengaged and fled. Zeke stretched in his seat. Well, that was satisfying. Sasha, still monitoring enemy comms, smirked. "I think their commanders are still arguing about how the hell this happened." Eleanor adjusted her glasses. "It happened because they thought technology alone would win them this battle." She glanced at Jim. "They didn't account for us." Jim exhaled slowly. This wasn't just a victory. This was a warning. And the Zaltari had heard it loud and clear. Aboard the Zaltari command ship, light years away, Overseer Kthal had no words. He had called for reinforcements. He had summoned the strength of an empire. And still, humanity had broken them. The transmission from the surviving fleet commanders was chaos. Unpredictable tactics. Ignored standard battle formations. Weaponized asteroids. Used our own ships against us. Kthal's claws dug into the armrest of his chair. He had believed the humans to be primitive, reckless, undisciplined. He now saw the truth. They were something far worse. They were adaptive, and if the Zaltari pushed them any further, they would not survive. Back aboard the Retribution, Emma Carter was curled up in Jim's chair, fast asleep. The battle had exhausted her, but not in the way it had exhausted the crew. She wasn't tired from fear or stress. She was tired because war was boring. Jim chuckled softly. She had been kidnapped by aliens, started a small-scale rebellion inside their ship, and witnessed a full-scale space battle. And now she was napping like it was just another Tuesday. Sasha grinned. "I like this kid." Zeke nodded. "Gotta respect someone who takes intergalactic warfare in stride." Jim exhaled, watching the girl sleep. The war wasn't over, but it was on hold, because the Zaltari, for now, had learned to fear humanity's response. And if they were smart, they would never test it again. Jim sat back, letting the quiet settle. The stars outside were peaceful again, and for the first time since this all began, he let himself believe that maybe, just maybe, they had changed the course of history today. And all because the Zaltari had messed with the wrong species.